June 6, 1944. As dawn broke over the English Channel, the ramps of Allied landing craft clanged open, unleashing thousands of American soldiers into churning surf and withering gunfire. What followed in the first 60 minutes at Omaha Beach would become one of the most harrowing and blood-soaked hours in modern military history. The D-Day landings were a triumph of coordination, courage, and strategic planning, but at Omaha, the plan unraveled immediately. Machine guns scythed through tightly packed infantry, artillery exploded across the surf, and bodies floated alongside broken gear. It was chaos. This is the story of that first hour, of confusion, slaughter, heroism, and survival, and why it remains the most brutal chapter of the entire Normandy invasion. Omaha Beach was one of 5 designated landing zones for Operation Overlord, the Allied invasion of Nazi-occupied France. Assigned to the U.S. 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions, the objective was to secure a 5-mile stretch of coastline between the Douve and Vire rivers, linking the British and American flanks. The beach was divided into 10 sectors, with names like Dog Green, Easy Red, and Fox Blue, each with specific landing plans, unit objectives, and timetables. The Allies expected resistance, but they misjudged its intensity. Intelligence had underestimated the strength of the German 352nd Infantry Division, a seasoned and heavily armed force that had recently reinforced the area. These defenders had turned the natural geography of Omaha, steep bluffs, narrow exits, and open sand, into a fortified killing field. The plan was to soften the defenses with naval gunfire and aerial bombardment before the infantry hit the beach. But rough seas delayed landings and scattered units, while the bombardment largely missed its targets. Many German strongpoints were untouched and fully operational when the first wave came ashore. What was meant to be a fast push inland quickly devolved into a desperate struggle to survive, and it all began the moment the ramps dropped. At exactly 6:30 a.m. on June 6, 1944, the first American soldiers landed at Omaha Beach. Nearly 3,000 men from the 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions were packed into small landing craft that lowered their ramps just as German guns opened fire. The sea was rough, the wind strong, and many of the boats drifted off course. Some troops had to wade through waist or chest-deep water for 100 yards or more, carrying over 60 pounds of gear, rifles, ammo, packs, and sometimes even parts of heavy weapons. Before even reaching the beach, men were being killed. Some boats hit mines. Others were blown apart by German artillery. Many soldiers drowned when their gear pulled them under. Those who made it to shore found themselves in an open field of death. The beach offered almost no cover, just flat, wet sand, metal obstacles, and wooden stakes rigged with explosives. German defenders were ready. They had dug machine gun nests, hidden mortars, and concrete bunkers into the hills. From high ground, they poured down bullets and shells. Whole squads were wiped out in seconds.
Company A of the 116th Infantry lost over 90% of its men almost instantly. Blood mixed with seawater. Wounded men screamed for help, but medics were often killed before they could reach them. Communications broke down. Radios didn't work. Units were scattered. Officers were dead or missing. Some soldiers froze behind obstacles. Others crawled inch by inch, trying to survive. It was a nightmare, the kind of chaos no training could prepare you for. But even in that hell, some men began to regroup. They found ways to move forward, firing back and pulling others with them. The fight for survival had truly begun. The first hour at Omaha Beach was complete chaos. Many soldiers landed far from their assigned sectors. Some were alone or in small groups, surrounded by the dead and wounded, unsure of where to go. Leaders were missing. Radios were destroyed by seawater. Smoke and gunfire made it almost impossible to see. Orders couldn't be given, and in many places, it seemed the entire attack had failed. But this is also where some of the most incredible acts of bravery happened. Small groups of soldiers started to take control. Junior officers and sergeants, some no older than 20, took charge when their leaders were killed. They yelled, waved, and even physically pulled men off the sand, telling them to move, crawl, or charge. They didn't always know the right direction. They just knew they had to move forward. Some engineers cleared paths through beach obstacles while under constant fire. Rangers used grappling hooks and ropes to scale cliffs. Medics ran through bullets to reach the wounded. A few tanks managed to land safely and began firing at German bunkers. Slowly, American fire began to push back. One key turning point came when a handful of soldiers found a small gap in the German defenses, a draw, or natural gap in the cliffs, and pushed through. Others followed, crawling, running, dragging wounded friends. The beach was still deadly, but a sliver of hope had opened. It wasn't organized, it wasn't clean, but inch by inch, American troops were beginning to fight back and live through it. The first hour at Omaha Beach was so deadly because everything that could go wrong did go wrong at the worst possible time. First, the terrain heavily favored the Germans. The beach was wide and flat, with almost no natural cover. Above it were tall cliffs and hills, perfect spots for German machine guns, snipers, and artillery. The Germans had spent years turning those cliffs into strongholds, with bunkers, concrete pillboxes, and trenches that gave them a clear view of the entire shoreline. Second, the Allied bombing and naval shelling meant to destroy those defenses before the troops landed. Mostly failed. Bad weather and poor visibility caused many bombs to fall too far inland. Most German bunkers were still standing, fully armed, and ready when the Americans arrived. Third, the timing and location of the landings were off. Rough seas and strong currents scattered the landing craft. Many troops landed in the wrong sectors, separated from their leaders and equipment. Some came ashore in front of the strongest German defenses by accident. And finally, the psychological shock was overwhelming. Many soldiers had never been in combat before. Watching friends fall all around them, with no clear orders or shelter, left some men frozen in fear. Others panicked. Some tried to dig into the sand with their hands just to survive. That hour wasn't just deadly because of bullets. It was deadly because the plan broke down, and the soldiers had to survive with nothing but courage and instinct. By around 7:30 a.m., after the bloodiest hour had passed, small groups of American soldiers began to get a foothold on Omaha Beach. It wasn't part of any grand strategy. It was pure survival. A few lucky units had landed in weaker areas of the German line. Others created openings by sheer force and determination. Using explosives, flamethrowers, and grenades, they began to take out German bunkers one by one. Soldiers crawled up narrow paths, threw smoke grenades to block enemy view, and flanked machine gun nests. Some of the wounded even joined the fight, refusing to be left behind. The tide was also rising, slowly covering the beach obstacles and reducing German visibility. Meanwhile, more troops, supplies, and even tanks finally started to land in better order. The worst of the killing was not yet over, but the Americans were no longer trapped. They had a foothold, and from there, the real push inland could begin.
Omaha Beach had the highest number of casualties of all 5 D-Day landing zones. While exact numbers vary depending on the source, most historians agree that over 2,000 American soldiers were killed, wounded, or went missing at Omaha Beach on June 6th. And shockingly, a large portion of those losses happened in just the first hour. Some units were nearly wiped out. For example, Company A of the 116th Infantry started the day with over 200 men and ended it with fewer than 20 able to fight. In comparison, the other beaches, Utah, Gold, Juneau, and Sword, faced resistance but suffered fewer losses. At Utah Beach, for example, fewer than 200 Americans were killed. Omaha was different because of a perfect storm: bad weather, strong defenses, poor visibility, and planning mistakes. The result was one of the bloodiest single hours in American military history, a time when survival itself was an act of heroism. The horror of Omaha Beach's first hour taught the Allies valuable and costly lessons. It showed that even the best-laid plans could fail in the face of real combat. After D-Day, commanders improved communication methods, better coordinated landings with supporting fire, and gave lower-ranking soldiers more flexibility to lead when chaos hit. But beyond strategy, Omaha left a deep emotional mark. Survivors carried memories of fear, bravery, and loss for the rest of their lives. The beach itself has become sacred ground. Today, the Normandy American Cemetery overlooks the very sand where so many fell. Rows of white crosses remind visitors of what was lost to win freedom. Books, films, and documentaries, from Saving Private Ryan to countless interviews, continue to keep the memory alive, reminding us that history was written here with blood, grit, and courage. The first hour at Omaha Beach was the most violent and deadly moment of D-Day, a time when careful planning collapsed under enemy fire and survival depended on raw courage. Thousands of young Americans stepped into chaos, and many never stepped back out. It wasn't victory through strength of numbers or perfect tactics, it was grit, sacrifice, and the refusal to give up. That hour stands as a brutal reminder of war's true cost. It shows how quickly a battlefield can turn into a nightmare, and how human spirit can still rise in the darkest moments. Today, we walk those beaches in peace. We look out over the waves where they landed, and we ask ourselves, if we had been in that first wave, could we have found the courage to move forward?